Let me ask you a question. Have you ever driven home after a long day on your route and thought to yourself, man, I am smoked? Right? And on top of that, I don't even know if I really made any money today. All right? Most techs and a lot of new owners, right, don't lose because they are bad at killing bugs. Most of us are pretty good at that, right? But you lose out because you never learned how to properly price a job, right? So in this episode, what I'm hoping to show you is just a simple way to think about pricing so that you can kind of stop guessing at things, stop working for free, stop needing to discount every time a customer raises an eyebrow at you, right? By the end of the video, you'll have a pricing framework, I hope, that you can explain to customers in plain English. And I'm going to give you a couple of real examples so the numbers should hopefully actually click for you, right? So, listen. Welcome back to Pest Profits, where we help pest control owners, managers, technicians boost revenue, increase profit margins, experience more freedom. All right, so I've done an episode on pricing before. You can look back through the history there and you'll see it. But here's why pricing feels worse than crawling through somebody's attic, right, or crawling through their crawl space full of spiders, right? Because you're not just spraying stuff down, right? You're actually putting a number on your time, and you're putting a number on your time, your skill, your company, your name. You're putting a number on it. And when somebody says that's a lot or that's too much, you don't hear that the price is more than they expected. What you hear is you are not worth that, or that's not worth that, right? And so what most of us do is, well, we make a couple of mistakes, right? But the first thing we do, the first mistake we make is we just blurt out the first number that comes to mind, right? Like we kind of like take a look at their house. Some of you have a set number kind of in your mind, but you take a look at their house kind of and you're like, yeah. Right? You realize like landscapers don't do that, right? Like pest control guys, we're the only idiots that do this stuff, right? So landscapers measure what they're gonna be mowing and trimming and all that stuff. That's how they price stuff. Like we really should be doing it the same way, right? But we'll just blurt out the first number kind of that comes to mind. And then our second mistake is we'll discount, right, them the second that the second they raise an eyebrow, the second they flinch at all, right, or they pause too long, we'll just immediately discount our price, right? And so listen, how many times have you set a price, looked at their face, and then immediately followed it with, but I can knock a little bit off of that for you, all right, or we can bring that down just a little bit, right? You literally right in front of their face told them you didn't even believe in yourself. You don't even believe in the number you gave them, right? And so, listen, in week one of this whole thing, we talked about the technician mindset versus the owner mindset. The technician mindset says, what's the lowest number, right, I can say so they won't get mad, right, or they'll say yes. Owners think like this, right? What's the right price that covers our costs, allows us to do a good job for them, and keeps the company alive so that we can show up again for them. That's the way an owner thinks, right? Listen, cheap is easy and readily available, but being profitable is a skill, and you need to learn the skill of being profitable, right? So listen, why is it that pricing with your gut is so dangerous, right? So let's talk about it. Gut pricing is like this. When your pricing strategy is based on your vibe, right? So I worked for a pest control company where they managed by vibe. They literally had no management training book whatsoever. They had no manager training, period. In fact, I got in trouble for calling and asking for an updated HR manual that was supposed to help us as managers. So, right, they were managing by vibe, right? Big shocker, that company is to this day is not doing as well as they could, right? And it's not because I'm not there, it's just because they're managing by vibe, right? By how they feel, right? By mood. Mood would be another way of putting it, right? They're just managing by their mood. So, right, so here's how this goes, right? You look at the house, and make a decision based on, right, the size of the house or the shape of the house, right? Doesn't look like they care very much about their house. I should probably price this less or they'll say no, right? Well, it looks like they really care about their house. I can price this one a little higher and they'll say yes, right? Or you price it based on how confident you're feeling that day. Some days you're on top of the world, right? Nobody could shoot you down. Nobody's going to burst your bubble, right? So, right, all your pricing is on point. And then other days, you don't feel very confident. Feel like everybody's saying no. You just need to make a sale. You just need a win. And so you'll price it at whatever price to get that yes, because it feels like a win, even though sometimes that yes is a loss, right? Or you'll think about the last customer that complained to you about their price, and you'll price it based on what that customer complained about. That customer is not this customer, but you'll price it based on that, right? And then you just throw out a number, right? So listen, here's the problem. Your cost of doing business doesn't change because you're nervous, right? Gas, it doesn't get cheaper just because the customer, right, raised their eyebrow or crossed their arms, right? Gas is still the same price. The products you're buying, they don't magically become half off because that guy wants his service done cheaper, right? It's not half off. Your product, your vendor isn't going to knock a couple bucks off the price because you really need to sell a job. No, like none of that's true. All that stuff is going to stay static. The only person losing money here is you, right, or your company. I can give you 100 illustrations of this from when I first started my company, right? But I'll give you one. Here's one. To this day, this guy is a customer with me, and I talk all the time about canceling him. But I had not made a sale for maybe, I don't know, a week or so, maybe a week and a half. I was relatively busy, just hadn't made sales, right? Phone calls would come in when I quoted my price. People were saying no. And so this guy called and asked me to come out because his prior pest control company ghosted him, he said. And so I went out and took a look at it, and it was a quarterly, and he negotiated me down. At that time, I think I was $90 for a quarterly. I think he negotiated me down to $70 to do his service. Then on top of it being $70 to do his service, he didn't pay me at time of service. He would pay off the invoice, which if you work in the service industry at all, you know what a pain that is, especially in the home services. Listen, just pay me. Like, I'm here, just pay me. But or put a card on file, right? Let me auto charge. But anyway, so so I think I've got him to like $83 now. He's still a quarterly, and my quarterlies run about 110 now. 110, 125 bucks. Basically to this day, right? In fact, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I really should cancel him because I am paying to do his service. So, right, I'm paying him to do his service. Literally, I'm paying him to do his service. By the time that I drive out there, everything else, I'm paying him to do his service. Give you another little, right, how big of an idiot I am. On top of that, he lives in a gated community and he won't give me the code to the gate. So I have to wait for somebody to pull into the community sometimes. 9 times out of 10, I get lucky, right? It hasn't really been that big of an issue. Though one time their little security guard followed me because he thought that I was trying to sneak through the exit with my truck. And he followed me to the guy's house and then tried to act like he was a cop. It was pretty funny. So he told me, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Well, what does it look like I'm doing?" Like, obviously I'm doing pest control. I got a de-webber in my hand and a backpack in my truck. What do you think I'm doing, genius? I break into gated communities to de-web and treat people's houses for free. Like I get it. The guy was just trying to do his job too. He didn't, but he was kind of a jerk about it. So, but anyways, all of that to say, right? All of that because I needed a win. I didn't get a win. That guy's, to this day, he's a pain. He does not pay his bill until like the day or 2 day. When I send my notification that I'm coming back to his house to do his next service, that's when he pays his bill. No lie, dude, no lie. I am paying that guy to do his service. I'm paying it, if no other reason, I'm paying him because I have to wait to get paid. Right, I'm financing his service for him. The more I'm thinking about it, the angrier I'm getting, and so let's keep moving here, right? So listen, what's the problem? I priced that based on the way I was feeling that day, right? I needed a win, and so it's added up over time, right? It's costing me. On the other side of that coin, right, is right? Times when I've put a number out and waited 2 days to get a response and then got a yes, right? I mean, just threw out a high number, right? Because I really didn't want a job. I can think of a job right now I did not want. I threw out a super high number. I was like, there's no way they'll say yes to this. I was doing, it was doing some pigeon like exclusion work, and it was 2 stories in a really weird like corner of the house where the way that I was gonna have to be on the ladder, I wasn't real comfortable with. I didn't want the job. I didn't want to do it. And so I just floated I want to tell them, it was $1,400 I quoted them to fix 2 soffits underneath, and waited 2 days, and I was like, thank God they didn't sign that. And then they did sign it. Right? But those jobs were worth the money when I did them, right? So listen, it's okay, right, to price things like they should be priced and to take your losses, right? Stop pricing things based on your mood, the mood of the hour, right? And get a structure and price based on that structure, right? So here's kind of a formula in plain English for you, right? You don't need an accountant to figure this stuff out, even though they might be able to help you too. But, right, in fact, they'll be able to help you way more than I will be able to. But your direct costs, right? What are your direct costs? Your direct costs are things like your time, your materials, right? Those are direct costs, right? If you didn't have that job to go do, right? You didn't have that house to go treat, you would not use that material. It would not require you to spend that time. That's a direct cost, right? And then your overhead is things like your equipment, your truck, your insurance, fuel costs, phones, software, all the invisible stuff that nobody ever thinks about when you're standing at their door and pricing their service, right? All of that stuff, right, goes in. That's your overhead, right? And then on top of your direct cost and your overhead, you also have to make a profit, right? That's what's left once everybody gets paid, including you, right? Your paycheck is not profit. If that's the way you're living, that's a bad way to live, right? So what's left after everybody gets paid, right? What is it that keeps the lights on for your business? That's your profit, right? And so here's the way that most technicians price things, right? What's the lowest number that I can float so this doesn't feel awkward, right? And again, right, like I said, an owner is thinking to themselves, how much is this job actually going to cost? What's the profit margin that I need to make so that we don't go out of business, right? And so here's a real basic model for you, right? If you want to make it real simple, right? Here's how I think you can remember it, right? Your price should equal your real cost and enough profit to make the job worth doing. All right? What does it actually cost you to do the job plus enough profit to make it worth doing? So the real cost, right, isn't just your chemical, right, or your materials. It isn't just your time, right? It includes your drive time, your labor, your truck, your license, your insurance, and then you need to tack something in there for the risk you're taking by doing what you're doing, because if you kill the neighbor's cat and they sue you, you better keep that in mind too. Right? So you're taking a risk here as well. You could fall off a ladder, break your leg. Now you're out of work. Right? Who's going to pay your bills? Those are all risks that you got to take into account, right? So be careful how you price things. Right? I'm not going to give you an algebra lesson, right? But here's the principle is this, right? Figure out how much it costs you to do the job. And then decide what percentage of profit you need in order to keep doing this on a regular basis, right? And price up from cost, right? Don't price down because you're scared. Price up. From whatever it costs you, the price has to be above that, right? So let me put a little meat on it for you, right? Here's some simple math for you. A standard single-family home is going to take a technician to treat it, right? If you're a solopreneur like me, right? You're out here running on your own. you, bare minimum, you're looking at 45 minutes. All right? And some of you are thinking to yourself, that's not true. It takes me 15 minutes to treat somebody's house or 20 minutes to treat somebody's house. What you're discounting is your drive time. And if you're like me, you're a solopreneur, your drive time in between stops isn't what it was when you were running a route for somebody like Termites or whatever, right, where everything was 5 minutes away from each other, right? You're driving 20, sometimes 30, 45 minutes in between stops, depending on your day, right? So it includes your drive time. It includes, right, walking around that house, making sure that you inspect it properly, then doing the treatment, and then it includes putting the notes in the system, right, and pressing the button. And then, if you're a solopreneur like me, it includes making sure that you, right, are working your AR. So you've got a tack on time for your AR, working your AR, making sure that they paid their bill, right, keeping all that in order. Plus, right, you've got to submit your monthly reports, plus to the Structural Pest Control Board, right? Plus you've got to do all of this other, right, your CEUs, all that other stuff. This is the actual job cost. You can't stay in business if you don't keep all of this stuff in mind. And so too many guys like me, right, are just thinking about, well, it's going to take me about 20 minutes to treat their house. So this is worth, they feel like they're making a lot of money at $60. You probably are barely breaking even at 60 at this point. Why do you think all of the big dogs have gone up so much? You say, oh, they're because they're greedy. No, it's because they have actual accountants looking at this stuff and going, hey, it's costing you this much to have the employee, this much for the truck, this much for their time, this much for the insurance, this much for all the other stuff that you're providing for these employees. So you better start increasing your costs if you want to stay in business. So, right, you need to start thinking about it too, right? You're using a reasonable amount of product, right, on these properties. And I know some of you guys go, well, it's only 10 cents, right, or 15 cents for my product. It's probably not. You're probably severely underestimating how much product you're putting out at people's houses, right? So if we break this all down, right, what does it take for an hour? Let's round it up to an hour just because that makes the math a lot easier, right? And then you can break it down from there if you want to, right? But so let's pretend that you're a small pest control company like me with one technician, and you want to pay yourself $22 an hour, which is really low. But, all right, let's say you want to pay yourself $22 an hour. So you got to add your payroll taxes in there, right? Whatever your basic benefits that you're offering are. Right, or things that you're taking care of, right? At the very least, that's going to push your labor cost to somewhere in the neighborhood of $30. It's probably going to push it further than that, but at the very least, it's going to hit somewhere right in that $30, right, per hour. So now you've got that's just your direct costs, right? Like your hourly wage, right? You've got to put your overhead on there now, right? Your truck payments and fuel and insurances and right, shirts, hats, right? The software that you use, the phone that you talk to them on, right? If you're running little ads on Facebook or whatever else, your marketing, right? Whatever else it is, right? You've got to add all that boring stuff in there before you ever spray the exterior of their house. All that stuff has to be attached to this account, right? And so for a small company like me, right, it's pretty typical for that cost of between both of those things, right, to be at least 100, 110, sometimes even higher than that, right? And so, right, but right, I mean, it's not that difficult to get there, right? You realize that. And so we'll split the difference, right, between all of that stuff. And let's go, right, actually, I'm going to go low. I'm going to go super low, right? Let's say that you're between 65, that lands you between 65 and $90. Right, we'll go super low. I think the math will compute just as easily, and so we'll go low, right? Let's call it $75. Let's call it $75 an hour it costs you for that stuff, right? And then we add in our material and equipment, right? Your backpack, your de-webber, right? Those are that's consumable equipment, right? Like it doesn't last forever. It's going to break down. You're going to have to replace it, right? So, right? Anybody that's been at this for very long, right? I know if you got a Birchmeier, right, it'll last a lot longer. But most of these new electric backpacks, like once they break, that's it, right? Like you're done for, and you'll probably get a couple. You might get a couple years out of them, but you got to break that cost down over those couple of years, right? So. Product, everything else. If we go low, right, we're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 to $10 for your material type cost, right? That doesn't include obviously some other things, but right, for the sake of this example, we're just trying to keep it simple, right? Let's say that your labor and overhead is $75 and your materials at $83. Or $8, I mean. Sorry, your material costs, right, equipment costs, you break it down to being $8 basically to do that stop. That means that the stop, just to do the stop, costs you $83. You don't make a dime, but you did the stop, right? So if you charge $80 for that stop, you're basically paying for the privilege of working for those people because you're already underneath your own cost by $3, right? So cost is not the price, right? You don't price based off of cost. Price is the minimum. That's the floor, right? So if the cost for that stop, let's say, is $83, and you want to make a 25% profit margin on it so that you can invest in the business, right? Then you've got to right, you reinvest in your business, be able to, right, make sure that stuff doesn't get broke down, right, and make sure that you got money in the bank. Then you have to take that cost and you've got to divide that cost by 0.75. And if you do that, you're going to come out to $110. $110 and I think 67 cents, or I think it's 6666666 when I was doing it on the calculator earlier. So let's call it 67 cents. So what does that tell you? It tells you that you're in the ballpark of needing to charge people at a minimum $110. Probably should be closer to 115 on that type of an instance. Right? So a healthy minimum price for you, right, to do a reoccurring service in that case, right, is maybe your $80 is going to be about right for doing a reoccurring service for them, right? If you can get a couple of those done in an hour, but if you're driving too far, then you need to be in that 110, 115 mark. And you say, well, yeah, but I got customers that are way out there. Well, right, you might need to, like, let them know, right? Hey, I'm actually from thus and such, right? And so my price is going to be a little bit higher due to that. But listen, I provide a superior service, right? Sell them your service, not your price, right? So, but listen, if it costs you $80 just to show up and do the job right, but you actually want to stay in business as well and grow, then you can't do the job for 75 or $80. You need to be somewhere in that 110 to 115 range, right? Otherwise, you're just going to be working for free. And the boat's going down, you're just, right? You may not be under the water yet, but you're on your way there, right? So, listen, those are pretty real costs, I think, for most small companies, right? And by the way, $22 an hour is very, very cheap, right? And so you and I both know you want to make more money than $22 an hour, so you probably need to up that quite significantly, right, if you want to start making some money. And so a lot of us are working for nothing, right? We're really not putting any money in the bank at the end of the month. You're living on a shoestring, right? When you add all of that up, right, you get a real cost per stop, right? And that's where things have to start, right? You have to start with that profit margin built in. And then that is the floor, not the cost of doing their service, right? Not the $83. That's not the lowest you can go. No, the lowest you can go is the 110, 115. That's the lowest you can go, and you should be up from that. Like, this is how, right? Listen, this is how you don't end up broke and you don't end up working for free. So listen, if that's your cost, right, do the math yourself, right? Figure out your real cost, right? Figure out what you want your profit margin to be. I think 25% is a pretty healthy profit margin, but figure out what you want your profit margin to be. Listen, I have this conversation all the time with guys, and in the past I have been mistaken about this. I've told guys like, yeah, man, you wouldn't even believe the profit margin in pest control. And the more that I'm in this and the longer I'm doing this on my own, the more that I realize I'm not making the profit margin I think I'm making. Like I might be at that 25% profit margin, and I need to get to work on it. Right? And so you need to take some things into account, right? Listen, when you see it that way, that you're giving people little discounts or hooking people up, doesn't feel very generous anymore, right? It feels like you're, it feels like a kick in the nuts, right? It feels like you're sabotaging your own paycheck is what it feels like, right? You're destroying your company's future, right? And think about it in terms of like bigger jobs, right? Like that's little stuff. Like that's like reoccurring monthly services. Think about it in terms of like bigger jobs, like big exclusion jobs or termite, right? You're in that case, right? You're taking on some serious structural issues sometimes, right? Like your risk increases significantly too. So here's the mistake most of us make, right? We price like big jobs. We price them lower because we think that pricing them higher, like the higher the price, the more potential there is for them to say no. Well, yeah, but you might need them to say no on high risk jobs. And if they say yes, you need to have that coverage for the risk, right? So here's the reality, right? You're going to be there longer on these bigger jobs. The material for them is going to cost you way more money. Like, dude, buying like screen to do big rodent jobs, buying the 1/4-inch mesh, like the hardware cloth and stuff, like that stuff, some of that stuff cost me more than the chemicals on my truck cost me. Right? The screws, the screwdrivers, like all that kind of stuff, right? The material's more expensive. Your liability is way higher on the bigger jobs, right? And the callbacks are even more difficult, right, to do and more expensive if you don't do the job right the first time, right? So why would it make sense for you to take less margin on those jobs? If anything, you should increase your profit margin on those jobs to make sure, right, that you're covering yourself. Because when you go back, you're not going to go back and then go, well, spend 2 hours there and charge them for it. No, that was covered the first time. So you better make sure you charged them enough to make it make sense if they call you back too, right? So listen. What that means is this, right? Here's how you explain the price, right? Listen, here's the problem that you have, right? In this case, let's go with like a regular homeowner with ants, right? The problem you have is you got ants, right? You got ants all over your kitchen. And, right, I'm sure what you need is you need a reoccurring service with us where we come out each month or every other month and we treat the exterior of your home in order to prevent you from having this problem again, right? And so, right, here's the plan, right? We're going to deweb the exterior of your house. We're going to treat the base of the house. We're going to treat the edges of the concrete. We're going to treat your fence line for you as well. And this would also include any follow-up services that we may have to perform for you to get this problem under control initially. And that's why we charge $125 for our initial. But following that, right, you would be at $80 each month. Right? And listen, the reason that we price it like that, right? I know that, sometimes people hear that $125 and they go, well, that's the same. You're doing the same job as when you come out each month. The reality is we're not, right? We're doing a lot more work on this front end. Plus, we've got to do all the office work, right? So you're paying for more than just me standing here right now with this backpack on. Right? And so this is what allows us to do this job in the best possible fashion with the most professional way that we can and provide you with the service that you deserve as a homeowner. Right? When you explain things to people like that, instead of apologizing for your price, right, they may still say no. Right? I'm not telling you that everybody's going to say yes, but they may still say no, but they're going to say no when you apologize for your price too. Right, you could go dirt cheap and tell somebody, yeah, I'll come out here and treat your house for you for $35 a month. There's some idiot out there that'll do it for $30, and they will say no to you because that guy will do it for 30. They're going to say no to you at 30. They're going to say no to you at 35. They're going to say no to you at 40. They're going to say no to you at 60. You might as well let them say no to you at 80, 90, or 100. I'm just saying, right? So listen, stop apologizing for your price. Explain what you're going to cover. Explain what you're going to do. Explain why the price is what it is, right? I use this product. I use this type of equipment, right? I provide you with this type of reporting, whatever it is, right? This is why the price is what it is. A lot of companies are just going to leave a tag on your door. You're never going to see you're not even going to see an invoice or a receipt from them that says that you paid them. A lot of companies aren't insured. A lot of companies aren't licensed, right? There's a lot of reasons why I price it like I price it. Right, I keep up with the continuing education, right? You say, well, that's a lot of stuff to explain to somebody, and most people don't care, and blah, blah, blah. No, you think most people don't care. And they might not care, right, way down deep inside, you know, or anything like that. But when you're standing in front of them, they heard that 125, and the other guy quoted them no initial, then you need to justify that 125. And right, that's the justification. They can say no to the justification just like they can say no to the 125, but at least you will have given them something to decide instead of just leaving them to decide based on just the price, right? You don't want to do that, right? Let's talk about another problem, right? Here's another leak for you, profit leak for you. Things like rodent stations, right? Or, right, sometimes we'll throw some of the craziest stuff in for people. I don't do this, but some guys probably do this, right? We'll throw in, right? Oh, I'll just spot treat that, you know, that little thing right there for you, right? Or treat the inside of somebody's a residential house for German roaches on a regular monthly. Are you crazy? Right? Like, you don't want to cover German roaches on a monthly exterior service. Why would you cover German roaches on that? Like, that's nuts. Right, and so though I'll give you a story. I had a customer who signed up with me when I very first started. I was doing no initials, and at that time it was I think $40 a month was my charge. And they called me, said that they had got my number from another customer of mine, and at that time I only had like 10 or 12 customers, and that they had told them that I wasn't charging an initial and that I'd come out for $40. And because of where the other customer lived, I just assumed who this customer, like the type of customer this was going to be, yada, yada, yada. I showed up, it was German roaches, and I had already told her over the phone that I would do it for $40. And I ate it and thought to myself, as soon as I get rid of these German roaches, they're going to cancel on me. She is on service with me to this day. That person is still on service with me, and actually has moved as well, and is like, she's just, I don't know, they're great people. And so, right, sometimes making mistakes can work out in your favor, but in general they don't, right? And so, listen, here's what happens when you start giving away those add-ons, because it's just a couple extra minutes, right? You know what? If you'll buy the rodent stations, I'll fill them up for free. That's $5 or $10 you just like paid that customer to a month. Why? Why would you pay that customer $5 or $10? If I told you, so that customer, right, you're going to increase that customer's account, right? Let's say that they're a $60 monthly, and you're adding 2 rodent stations, and so the price should be $70. They're going to pay you $70, but then you're going to give them $10 back in cash. How long would it take before you were like, well, this is stupid. I ain't doing those rodent stations for free. I'll bet you it wouldn't even take 2 services before you said that, right? But a lot of us are doing exactly that with our customers. It's just a couple of traps in the attic. Right? Look, you don't cover rats on a general pest with no rodent stations. You know that. I know that. Anybody that's been in this industry for any amount of time knows that. Right? No, it costs you money. You want me in your attic to put traps? That costs you money. Right? Like, why do we do this stuff? You know what? I'll seal that hole up for you. It's no big deal. Yes, it is a big deal. You're giving, if I told you, if you were at somebody's house and they had a hole next to their AC line, right? Which in our industry, pretty general, right? Runs about $150 to seal up. And you said, well, I'm just going to do it for free. If I told you, give that customer the $150, pay them $150 out of your bank account, you would say, that's crazy. I ain't paying them $150 out of my account to seal that hole. Well, that's what you just did. You did exactly that, right? You can't give away, listen, all that little 10 minutes, the little things that you don't think add up to that much over the course of a year add up to a lot of money that you're losing, right? That little bit of extra, right? Might be small on its own, but it's not small when it, right, when it continues to compound, right? So here's how you ought to think, right? What if that little extra was its own clearly defined service? What if that wasn't at their house? What if that was a new customer that called you and said, hey, I've got rodents? What would you tell that customer? Because that's what you should tell that customer. You can give them a discount for being your customer, right? They don't have to pay the trip charge. So maybe you will, right, do those rodent stations for just $5 a piece. But, right, so you're not going to charge them, you know, the big trip charge on it. But listen, what if you added up all of those things that you're doing, right? If you added all those things up and, right, instead of throwing all that stuff away for free, right, you'd be making more money. So listen, even if you don't think it's a huge number, does it matter how big a number it is? If it was $20, would you take $20 out of your wallet and put it on their doorstep? Right? I don't think you would, right? So, especially if you're working on production or commission, you definitely wouldn't, right? So listen, you say, well, how am I supposed to even present that to people? Oh, it's simple, right? Hey, when I was treating and doing my inspection, I noticed you had some rat droppings in the garage. I know you're not covered for rats now, but we could put a couple of stations in, maybe put a couple of traps out in the garage for you. The stations would be whatever you charge for stations, right? Let's go cheap and say $50 a station. It's $50 per station to purchase and install them. And then, right, I would service those each time that I'm out. They'd be $5 a piece. So that'd be $10 for the stations. And, right, the traps in the garage would be covered under the stations. Bada bing, bada boom, right? As Michael Scott would say. Right, so, but listen, don't quit knocking yourself down and not getting paid what you deserve to be paid for stuff, right? And then, right, it's as simple as, listen, you want me to take care of that for you? I can get those ordered today if you want me to. Right? And then just let it sit. If they're like, well, I don't know, I need to talk to my husband. Hey, no sweat. I'll follow up with you tomorrow and see if we can get on top of that before they get up in your attic, and then it's even a bigger deal and a more expensive one. Right? Like, it's that simple, right? You can even throw this in there, right? If they get in your attic, man, once rats get in your attic, if it gets bad, like a lot of times you end up having to replace your insulation. Insulation on a house just your size, right? Even on a small house, you realize that insulation's about $7,000, right? $7,000, right? And so tell them, right? Like, hey, they get up in your attic and they start tearing stuff up there, right? HVAC lines, stuff like that, or we end up having to replace your insulation. You're gonna end up somewhere in the neighborhood with probably $5,000, $6,000, man, on something like that. We could get this taken care of for $100 today, and right, we'll get you set up and taken care of. Right? That's how you sell stuff. Right? Not by, well, I'll just do it for free. Right? Or let me see how cheap I can do this for you. Like, that's not how you sell stuff, right? And so listen, if they say no to you, right? That's fine. Right? Like, what's the big deal? You still showed up, you still saw what you saw, you offered them a professional solution, you did your job. If they say yes, you just made more money, right? Like, you can't lose here, right? So how do you explain your price, right, without sounding like you're constantly on defense, right? How do you move this from, right, math on a piece of paper, right, to the way that you present it to them? So, right, listen, you can have the most perfect pricing formula in history and still kill a sale if you don't sound confident. Right, so here's some words, right, that you should learn how to say, right? Here's what I'm seeing, right? Listen, I'm seeing ants all along your back wall, right? What does that mean? Well, eventually they're not going to be on your back wall, they're going to be on your house. And eventually they're going to be in your kitchen, they're going to be in your bathroom. right? What I recommend is a monthly service where we treat the exterior of the house, we treat the edges of the concrete, we treat the perimeter of the yard, and we take care of them that way. Right? That includes us de-webbing, right? Knocking down the webs around your house for you as well. And then obviously every time that we're here, we're inspecting, we're making sure that we're staying on top of whatever pests you may have, right? And any new issues that may arise. That usually, right? For a monthly, that is $80, right, every month, and it's $125 to get you started today. The reason that it's priced like that is obviously it's not just, right, the backpack on my back or the chemical that's in the backpack that's on my back. It's also, right, the price it takes, right, for me to get here, all of the other things that go into being in business in California. It's not the cheapest place to do business, and so that's why we charge what we charge, because it allows us to do the very best job that we can do for you in the most professional manner that we can do it. Would you like to get that started today? Or is there another day this week that would work out better for you? It's that easy, right? And they can say no, they can say yes, right? Yeah, I'll give you the 6 steps just as, right? This is how I frame this, right? Here's what I'm seeing. Here's what that means for your house. Here's the plan that I recommend to you. Here's what that includes. Here's what that runs. And here's why it's priced like that, right? Don't discount your price. If they flinch, right? If they flinch, right? Like, oof, $125, right? Right? Listen, you can follow it up like I get it, right? Nobody wakes up in the morning and thinks to themselves, you know what I'd love to spend $125 on today? Get my house sprayed, right? And I know that there's cheaper options out there. There's a lot of cheaper options out there, right? You can go to Home Depot and buy that stuff and spray your house, but, right, we use 2 of those when we treat your house. We were putting 2 gallons of product out on your house most of the time when we're treating your house, right? And I know that there's a lot of companies out there that are cheaper. Some of them are unlicensed and uninsured, and some of them are just cheaper because they're not doing a great job, right? They're just going to spray the base of your house. They're not looking out for new stuff. They're not staying on top of other pest issues that you may have and being proactive, right? Listen, our program is designed to provide you with the absolute most professional pest control service on the market, right? It's that easy, right? And that's why it's $125 to get you started today, right? You don't have to push the service on them. You don't have to, right, get excited, right? Be calm, explain the situation, leave it up to them, right? And listen, if you're a tech on a route, you might not be the one always setting, right, the official pricing, right, or the original pricing, but you are the one who decides how you talk to the customer about it and how you treat your time, right, with the customer. So listen, as a technician, don't ever give away work that you could legitimately charge somebody for. Here's what technicians do, right? I've worked in a large company, managed for them as well. Here's what a lot of technicians do. They don't want to write up the paperwork. They don't want to write up the contract. So they would rather just do it and not worry about it, right? Not get a complaint from the customer, then tell the customer legitimately what the issue is and how much it's going to cost to fix that issue, right? Listen, if it takes real time, it takes real products on your truck, and there is any real risk associated with it, it's a service. It's not a favor. Don't do favors for people. And if when you're in the process of quoting somebody a price, it feels like it's going to be a headache, trust your intuition. 9 times out of 10, it is. You're right. It's going to be a headache. Leave it. Let it go. Walk away. Right? Listen, when your gut starts screaming at you, this is not enough money for dealing with this, trust your gut, right, on that one. And listen, more invasive initial services should have higher prices attached to them. Like, that's all there is to it. Like, there's paperwork on the back end that has to be done, right? Things have to be entered into the computer. Card numbers have to be got, right? Things have to be put into your AR. There's a lot of things going on in the background that I know the customer doesn't see, but you should know well enough to know, hey, like, there's a lot of stuff going on here. my maintenance service is priced like it is because I price my initial service like this so that I can cover all of this stuff. All right? Listen, it is better to lose a job because you priced it right than it is to get a job and lose money on it because you priced it wrong. All right? And so quit racing to the bottom. You don't want to be the cheapest pest control company out there, right? Listen, you can't control who the cheapest pest control company is in town, right? But what you can do is not join them in being the cheapest pest control company in town, right? Don't compete with them, right? So listen, let me give you, right, I've tried to give you a little bit of homework as we've gone along here each time. So let me give you a little bit more homework, right? Once every day, pick just one job out of your day and actually notate how much time you were there, how much the customer paid for it, and whether you feel like that job is worth it or not worth it when you're all finished with it. Just one job every day. Just do that with one job every day for the next month. Do that, right? And just mark it, right? Worth it or working for free. Then, right, at the end of the month, look at your list and see how many of them on there are working for free. Right? And here's what you'll see, right? You might notice a pattern, right? We used to have this when I worked for a big company and we had managed for them. We had a salesman who was infamous for underselling apartment complexes this way, right? You might notice that you'll see a pattern. Maybe you see certain types of jobs that you're not pricing right, or maybe you'll see add-ons that you're giving away for free. Or you'll notice that, hey, you know what? In certain neighborhoods, I severely underprice everything in that neighborhood. Like either I need to not do business in that neighborhood or I need to get these prices up to par, right? And if you're a technician, then take that list to your manager, right? And tell them like, hey, like here's what I'm noticing on my route, right? How can I adjust the pricing on these? Or, right, am I doing something wrong while I'm there that's costing me time, right? If you're the owner, right, you need to ask yourself, if I had to do the job every day at that price for the next 12 months, would I still be in business? If that was your only customer, but they were an everyday customer, right, 5 days a week, right, every week of 52 weeks a year, would you still be in business at the end of the year? If that was your only customer and that's how it was priced. Just ask yourself that question. And listen, in the next episode, we're going to take everything we've talked about, mindset, income, objections, pricing, apply it right to the big question that I think a lot of you have, which is, right, how do I actually go from an employee to my first truck, right, without blowing up my life or going broke, right? We'll talk a little bit about licensing, basic setups, first customers, right? How to start from day one building a solid pricing structure for yourself, right? Which I didn't do. So listen, if this helped you rethink how you look at your numbers, hit that subscribe button. Send this to a tech who you feel like is undercharging or maybe needs to hear this. Maybe they just need the reassurance that they're pricing things right. All right? Drop a comment below on one type of job that you realize that you've been underpricing. Let's fix it together. Thanks for joining me on Pest Profits, and we'll see you on the next one.